right, welcome to Intent Company Live. It is March 22nd, and as I promised this week, we're going live with an awesome interview today. I'm with my dear friend, awesome businessman, Jason Rinker. Jason, thanks for joining.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Awesome, cool. So we're going to dig into all the things we've been talking about, right? Advocacy, marketing, and faith and family, and making it happen. And so before we dig in on some questions, this is going to be super organic, like most of the stuff that I do here. Super organic, so we'll see where it goes. We may start talking about business, and then we'll, be discussing, I don't know, what happened in Russia today or something random. Who knows where we'll go? But
that could be interesting.
It could get interesting in here. We may lose some viewers, but that's fine. You guys, it's okay. We may gain a couple others too. So, okay, so here's the deal. Help us out. Share, like, subscribe, hit the buttons, do the stuff. Braden will help you, tell you what to do.
Hey guys, welcome back, and make sure to smash that like button, subscribe, and make sure to hit that bell for notifications.
There we go. Braden's dropping it.
Go, Braden.
As well. There he is, Mr. Braden. So do the things. Hit the button, smash the like button, do the stuff. And so, yeah, let's just dig in. So, Jason is one of my favorite people in the entire world. There was only two people at my wedding. It was this man and his wife. And I have been really just uber impressed with his perspective on business, the businesses that he's made. He was the co-founder of Mountain Flame Propane, which they recently sold. He's also the co-founder of Cloud9 Pipelines in the home services industry. I'll let him share a little bit more about that. But I just want to say, before we dig in on this, it's just his perspective of how he started the business, how he runs a business, his perspective taking care of customers, the balance between kingdom activity and family. It's Jay's the man. And so you're going to learn a lot of stuff. And yeah, so thanks, man. I appreciate you're here.
I love being here. I think you overhyped me maybe a little bit. But.
No, I didn't. Underhyped. Underhyped. So Jay, tell me a little bit about like Mountain Flame Propane. When did you start it? How did it come about? How did you even start the business?
Yeah, I was 25 years old, a kid, and actually it came out of a situation of prayer. My father was actually a local dentist. We had always been raised kind of doing entrepreneurial things as kids. And for those young dads, I would say any chance you get it, to get your kids into entrepreneurial things as young as possible. Amen. I mean, lemonade stands. I mean, we did fruit stands, Christmas tree farms. It was just something my dad had a passion for. Yeah. As kids, we didn't even realize the lessons we were learning in the process, but it put an entrepreneurial spirit in us. In our local community, we're rural California, Central California. Don't hate me. It's
Central California is awesome. Yeah, great people in Central California.
Beautiful people.
There's even a few by the coast, but Central California is a wonderful place.
It is. God-fearing people, a lot of God-fearing people, wonderful community. There was an independent propane company that had started. They had ran for about 5 years and then sold out to a major propane company. Service immediately started to drop. Customers went from someone who cared to just being a number. Yeah. And my dad noticed that, said, sons, and my brother, my younger brother, so he's 22 years old, said, sons, I think there's an opportunity for you to start a company, a propane company. There's a need. And he was getting the feedback from the community, which allowed him to kind of see the need, and opened it up to prayer immediately. God, hey, if this is where you want us to go, open the doors. And the doors just kept opening. One of the biggest things that happened to us was my brother was working out on the coast and happened to run into a propane company. He was eating lunch in front of a propane company there. Western Propane, and saw a guy come out to the post office, out to get his mail from the mailbox, and went up and just asked him, say, hey, we're thinking about starting a propane company. Do you have any advice for us? Is this something you can help us? He said, oh, I've loved it. I've helped a couple of guys start propane companies. Awesome. and took us under his wing as a mentor. And Steve Brown was a phenomenal mentor. I can't speak enough about mentorship. and how important it is. But long story short, made a step in faith, bought some vehicles, started from zero, had nothing, didn't know what we were, didn't know what we were doing, and the size of company we were going to start. I always tell people, if I would have known what we were getting into, I probably wouldn't have done it. There's something about the ignorance in it, and the excitement that you get into in the process of starting up a company. And and grew that company from one customer to about 3,000 customers by the time we sold it. And went through a lot of changes in the process of that. Obviously, personal growth and a lot of things like that. So
how many years did you have the business?
20 years.
20 years. That's amazing. You're a young man, grew a 20-year business and got to exit, and wow, that's impressive.
It was a lot. Looking back, I wish there were a lot of things I would have kind of known previously to it, but I guess experience is kind of the master of all teachers. It's it gets you through it. But when you're in the thick of it and you're waking up, the business is driving you. Yeah. Yep. You're waking up and you're doing your job, and the business is driving you, and you really don't feel like you have much control over it. And you got to get the job done. You got to get the billings out. You've got to do the paperwork. You've got to meet the compliance standards, and you just kind of start doing it. Yeah. And the next thing you know, you look up and you don't have enough employees. Right. You don't have enough employees. You don't have enough equipment. You don't have enough capital. You don't have enough, and you're starving in all these different areas, and it forces you to kind of learn. And I would say that I look at business as a three-legged stool, sales and marketing, finance, and operations. Yep. We were sitting on a three-legged stool running on one leg. You can still sit on it, but it's hard. It takes a lot of work to stay balanced on a one-legged stool. Amen. It's true. And so we sat on operations for the longest time, and it was the focus of our business for a very long time. But it was just burning us out. And, if I were to give anybody advice on a startup business or a small business, is don't neglect the other legs of the business. Yeah. For instance, growth was always a big thing. When you're growing heavily, you spend a lot of money, and things all of a sudden are tight. I wish I would have known more about financing things. I wish I would have not lived so tight and used financial services to help grow our business at a faster rate. In fact, we didn't grow as fast because we were always strapped for cash. Yep. And then on the advertising side, on the marketing side of things, when you have finance restricting it, you almost don't want to grow. Right. And so it wasn't until around probably year 10 or 12 that started to kind of come in. And actually, Billy was a big part of that. Turned me on to some amazing books and helped me really kind of understand the need of incorporating the marketing part of it. But I would say what made us the most successful was our drive to take care of our customers. It was customer based. Everything we did was, how do we make our customers' lives easier? How do we take the best care of our customers that we can? And that's what we built it on. And that's a principle. Love people, show love to people. Yep. So that was kind of how we got started. Yeah, and again, I got to be around for many of those years, and from the early stages to the growth stages, and just getting, every time we got together, get to hear more about, like, okay, what problems are you facing, what challenges are you overcoming? And I loved it because I was like, I got to learn from his experience. I forgot what episode, but we talked a ton about experience and how experience is either earned, which is like the experience you go through, which is the most valuable. You paid a high price for it, and so there it hits.
but you can also leverage experience by paying attention to other people, right? The books you read, the podcasts you watch, the people you talk to, the advice you get, and you're like mentioning the mentor and the books and all those things. It's like a huge asset. But what you just mentioned a second ago about your commitment to customers, right? We say on the show a lot, serve people, solve problems. And, you know, you obviously had a people group because you had your geographical area that you were able to influence with your infrastructure. But then the problems you solved really it was actually less about propane, and it was more about taking the experience that you gave to the customer. Would you say that's true?
Absolutely.
So what were the things that you were doing experientially for your customers that like the competition wasn't?
Well, most of the time it was answering the phone.
Right. Being available.
Being available.
Yeah.
Working to meet people's needs where they needed them. In our industry, a lot of the time, you would just, if there was a problem, a customer had a problem, they would be pushed through call centers, red tape, and it was for us, it was more of how can we get them the help they need at the quickest possible way we can, with the best quality that we can. And obviously that, it starts with your employees and building your team. And so it was always driven around how can we make our customers' experience with us more friendly, more enjoyable, easier to use. There was, and my brother was really critical in this. My brother Ryan was very focused on the operations side, and changing our software was a big deal. Our messaging, our connection to who we were to our customers, and vice versa. What were our customers to us? I know we used in fact, one of our big and only kind of early advertising was our children.
Yeah. And actually, this became kind of like a big deal in the area. So tell them what you did. This is good.
So every Christmas we would do a Christmas card, a flyer out, just wishing people a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and we would put a propane tank out, and we're in the rural mountains, and we'd put it out in the forest, and we'd put our children, of course. My oldest son was born the year that we started the company. My brother's oldest son was born that year. So it started with 2 babies, and then babies kept getting added to the propane tank, and they would grow. And I'll tell you what, at the year 10 or 11, I think we were late one year. We're just slammed. Winter's just tough for propane companies. We were late with the flyer, and we got calls. We get calls from ladies saying, "Where are your kids? Like, we haven't gotten the postcard from your family. We want to see the kids."
Wow.
So it was just an interesting relationship that we kind of didn't even really understand, but they saw us as part of their family.
Amen.
And we were an extension of their home. We're a necessity.
Right.
If you run out of propane in the middle of winter, you have no hot water. You have you don't have any heating. I mean, it's a
big deal.
It's a big deal for your family. And I think that's in a lot of industries, especially service industries. And so they become reliant on you, and that was a beautiful thing. It's also a lot of pressure. Because if you can't provide that, then obviously in our heart we don't feel like we're able to. We want to do our job.
Yep.
And so as that went on, obviously employees became. At first, it was just us. It was my brother and I, and my brother-in-law at the time, and it was just us. And eventually, we couldn't do all that, and then we had to build those core values into our employees. And raise them to do the same thing. But I would say that was the biggest thing for us, was the relationship and understanding the value that we brought to them and that they brought to us, and respecting that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously on the show, we talk a lot about serving people, solving problems, right? And you obviously had a people group, you had a problem you were solving, and I think one thing that I think gave you a unique advantage was you were the people that you were serving.
Yes.
Like your family's from this area. This is your community.
Yes.
Right. And one of the unique advantages you had was that you were, rather than being the big national that's in here, that's faceless and doesn't have relationship and doesn't have history, you had this vested interest in your community, the land, the people, the everything. And, with the group of people you were serving, that was important to be part of that family element, wouldn't you say?
Oh, vitally important. It's something, yeah, and I feel like I've always asked myself, because I wanted to really grow at one point. There were some personal things in my family that happened that, caused us to sell, but really we got to a ceiling where it was, let's grow, let's really grow. And that was one of the biggest kind of things that we had to struggle with is if we grow, how much of this are we going to have to give away? Are we going to lose this? And I think that is a big struggle that has to be dealt with, is how do you keep that personal relationship and that identity you have with your community as you grow? Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because, not to say that you can't make an impact outside of that environment, but, we talk a lot on this show about, I'm kind of anti the whole niche idea. Now, even though serving people and solving problems, that's what it is. Like, who are you serving? What problem you solve? That is kind of creating your niche. But, like we talk about, there's something about doing work you love for people you love with people you love. And that's something I saw in your organization, right? You truly cared about the people you served. You cared about the people you did it with, your employees. And again, it was more than like, oh, we do propane. No, like we provide comfort, we provide reliability, we provide basic sustenance and value to people. So there was really that like dynamic. And I feel like most entrepreneurs could do a lot from thinking of it in that way, right? Where like the people that you get to serve, like that's a big difference. Saying like, a lot of the stuff you watch online today is like, oh, what's the up and coming thing that you can make a buck, and kind of what people have the thing. And it's not saying that you're necessarily from a bad, but it's almost like, how can I exploit these people? They have the money and I can do the thing to kind of, there's a much different when you have that heart condition. It doesn't mean that they're necessarily your neighbor, but in your heart, you have a place for the people that you serve. I mean, tell me, how much was the drive to do and deliver what you did actually based on this idea that you actually cared about the people you got to serve?
I would say almost all of it. And it was actually a struggle because in a way we undervalued ourselves too. There was a time where, we could have had higher margins. Mm-hmm. We could have made more profit. And we didn't understand the value that we were bringing to people. And it was a struggle. It was always a struggle. I mean, my brother and I would have many conversations about, hey, we need to raise our prices. We're always on the edge. I think we can get more, but we didn't really understand the value that we were offering. And it was people over profits. But at the end of the day, if I can't run my business and I'm not making profits, I can't provide services to my people.
Exactly. And it happens all the time where you undervalue, like you guys were instinctively service driven, instinctively going the extra mile. There should be a value on that, and there should be a compensation for that, right? We want to give more money to the people that are taking care of us in that way, and that's part of the value proposition. And I'm sure, like your brother would have some of the concerns about, hey, how can we go to this extra mile when operationally and the time and this and that. So, one of the best ways to actually increase your pricing is by adding all of that extra value in a way that's very tangible and appreciated by your customer base. And so it sounds like maybe you just instinctively gave that, but you didn't quite value that aspect enough and realize that the margin wasn't just, oh, I'm going to get more money from my customers. Actually, like, wait a minute, this is more attractive, more valuable, and our customers would rather pay more to us to do that than going again to like a more turn and burn national provider. Is that
yes, true? Absolutely. Yeah. And we realized that later on. I mean, people would tell us, I don't care, because it was, for us operationally, we were running into issues where it would be really cold and some people would run out of gas because they were checking their own tanks and things. But they would say things like, I don't care what it costs. Can you get it to me?
Right.
And that was when light bulbs started
Yeah.
to kind of come on and say, wait a minute, we are providing something that is substantially better than what anybody would do, because everyone else would tell them, well, we're not there for a week. We can't be there for 2 weeks. And
Yeah.
and that was, and that's when the light bulb really started to come on for us. And we started to realize, oh, okay, we don't have to just eat it to provide service, an amazing service that people are willing to pay more for better service.
Yep.
And it was that was a game changer for
Yeah.
us, for sure. And understanding that there are people that are professionals that are another thing that really kind of boosted us was when we started to realize that we don't need to be the best at everything.
Yeah.
I don't need to be the best at marketing and sales. I don't need to be the best at finance. That there are people out there that love it and would love to do that for you and are worth every penny to get into your business. And consulting, getting good consultants was a life changer for us.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that because obviously you grow from one customer to 3,000. There's a ton of growth, and I know even I feel that a lot personally. Growing is almost the most dangerous time in your business. So often you think like, oh, getting started and bootstrapping and solopreneurship, and it's actually a lot more. There's less risky than when you do grow. It's a better quality problem, but boy, how do you grow? How do you scale? Do you get the person before you need them or after you need them, and then it's too late? And all those dynamics. And then with you, not only is it just manpower, you've got materials, you've got tanks, you've got trucks, you've got all this stuff that comes into the equation. And so, what would be maybe some wisdom that you have around growing, scaling, but also the quality of people, and just any advice that you have around that dynamic? Actually, I need to take out my notebook. I need this info right now.
Well, it's hard because when you go from being the doer, I'm in the field doing everything, to being able to look at yourself and say, I still have value sitting at a desk, and now I'm managing people instead of managing systems, and it was very difficult. I would say the biggest value that we had in that growth would be, learning to trust our employees, learning to let go and give responsibilities to other people, and know that I had trained them and let them go.
Yeah. And that understanding, it's weird because especially when you're doing the work, you're more valuable leading 5 people doing the work than you doing it yourself.
Yes.
And that's a big change. And so, I talk a lot on here about how most businesses are actually started because you've learned a skill, you did it for someone else, you figured out how to roof, you figured out how to plumb, you figured out how to do this stuff, and you're like, wait a minute, why am I making this guy rich and I can do it myself? And then you go and jump into it, but what you don't realize, and this is something you mentioned earlier, which I'd love to kind of talk about, is to be successful in business, it's almost has very little to do with the product and the service you offer, and it's actually about being successful at business skills.
Yes.
There's business skills. You mentioned the financing, the hiring, the leading, and all that stuff. And that has nothing to do with pumping gas, but yet it has everything to do with a successful propane company.
Absolutely.
And so it's a huge transition, especially when when would you say, what year were you at when you really started to add team members? Like maybe, not just ones and twos, but you're like, whoa, we need to scale. What time is that?
I would say that was right at around the 6-7 year mark.
Right. So you figure for 6 or 7 years, you've just been doing everything. And now you have this massive transition, this mindset shift.
Yes.
Where you've got to turn into a business leader. You got to start thinking operational systems. You got to start thinking cash flow. You got to start thinking leading, HR, all of this stuff, which is completely foreign to everything you've ever been doing.
Everything.
So what was that process like? Which things do you wish you knew earlier? What decisions do you wish you made earlier, right? You've got earned experience, and we would like to take some of that. I would like to take some of that. What in that sphere? What do you think?
Well, it was. I wish we would have leaned on consultants more. I wish we would have gone out and found consultants to give us advice, especially in the finance realm. I felt like in ours operations, because it's what we did.
Yeah.
Obviously, the software was a big deal for us. A big software upgrade is anybody that deals with business. You want to stress out your employees. Go tell them you're going to change your whole software.
That is the world I'm in. I stress out organizations for a living by implementing our software. Yes.
Yes, we are going to change the way that you have done things for the last 10 years. And we're going to throw the baby out with the bathwater, and we're going to bring a whole new system into place.
There you go.
And unfortunately, we did that twice.
Yeah.
If we would have thought bigger and thought about it sooner and bigger, we would have made one choice, and it would have been one change. But we didn't want to invest the money. We didn't want to invest what we just did. We wanted to start. We thought this meets our goals now,
right?
And so we went for what met our goals then. Within 3 to 4 years, we had outgrown that. And we're already dealing with a situation where our software was not adequate.
Yeah.
And so we had to do it again. And we lost a couple of office people because of that.
Yeah.
It was just too much. So, one of the big things would have been to really think about where you want to be. And at the rate we were growing, we should have. But again, we were so caught up in the grind that you look at, you're so focused on the daily operations that you forget to do the vision work. And we should have done a lot more of that.
So I want to transition because this is interesting because I love what you just said. So one of the things that I talk about a lot in the show, and I'm constantly challenging myself on this, is like, we at times have these visions, right? And we think about, okay, what could we do? What impact could we make? What does this mean for our family? And what does it mean for the kingdom? And these big goals and all these things we go after, but then very quickly, just the day-to-day aspects of running a business consumes us. And 6 months, 9 months go by, and we forget what we talked about in January in our meeting, and we almost lose track of vision because we're so caught up in the day-to-day. How do you manage that? How do you stay vision-oriented? How do you stay with the big, grand, glorious call and thinking about the impact, and then just that practical demand on your business? What kind of things did you do, or what kind of things did you think about, or what kind of things do you wish you did to kind of stay in that kind of, because most people start a business, at least, or maybe not right away, but when you start getting going, you start thinking about like, man, what kind of impact could we make? What could this look like? What could we do? And so you hold those two things of vision and operational day to day. How do you juggle that?
It's hard. Again, it's all three of the legs of the stool. If you're only focused on operations, you'll be drowning in on the finance side or the marketing side. And for us, we always tended to have a finance driven decision making. Mm-hmm. Hey, we want to upgrade our software. Well, that's $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, and at the time that was a massive amount of money that we considered to need to take out of our savings when we should have been financing it. We should have been looking at it at a completely different way of financing the software, or with the understanding that instead of having to pull it all out at once and do this thing, we could finance it out. It would have just taken so much more stress, and so in a way we limited it ourselves. By not having a clear understanding of the financial tools that we could have implemented that would have helped us to make those choices without having to worry about, at the end of the year, are we going to be starving?
Right. So managing cash flow.
Cash flow is, absolutely huge. Cash flow was, that was, and then you get focused on it. Yeah. It becomes a focus when you should be focusing on the bigger picture, and instead you're laser focused on cash flow and you're laser focused on operations. And again, you forget that these kinds of things can be managed a better way. And I would say that was one of our biggest hindrances. And to be able to see that if we finance things, we could grow and take a little more risk. But to us, we grew up in a family where debt was, debt's a bad thing, and you live on a cash basis. I'm not saying it's a terrible thing, but it definitely hindered our growth.
Yeah, it's also consumer debt versus like investment debt is obviously a big difference between those
Absolutely.
two things.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, okay.
I would say the other thing that was kind of a big issue for us was just not taking the time to do the vision work. When you're working 10, 12-hour days, 6 days a week, you're raising a family, there's not a lot of desire to go harder. You get burned out, and I wish we would have taken more time to step away from the business and look at the bigger picture as a group and say, what is it that we want? What does this look like 3 years down, a year down the road, 3 years down the road, and really do some strategic planning. We started doing that later on, which turned out to be beautiful. And then being able to understanding that you need to drive that ship to those visions. If you're stuck in the day-to-day grind, it's hard to drive the ship to a vision when all you're dealing with is like, what are we doing today?
Yeah.
And that was, I think, once we started to look at a bigger picture and say, where do we want to be in a year from now? Where do we want to be in 3 years from now? Where do we want to be in 5 years from now? Great, let's put targets on that, and then you can start driving your team. It starts making now you're making financial decisions not based on today or at the end of the month or the end of the quarter. You're making financial decisions based on 5 years out. Where are we going to be 5 years from now? What does our software look like? What do our vehicles look like? What does our manpower look like?
Yeah.
Because that was employees are a big investment. It's a huge investment.
Your biggest.
It's my biggest investment. And so to hire people and make the assumption, hey, someday down the road we are going to have 2,000 customers. Right now we have 1,000. Well, what if we don't?
Right.
What if we don't have that? I'm going to be stuck with employees that I can't pay.
Right.
And so having kind of faith, also having faith that you're doing things right and driving it, and then being able to kind of track that growth and be able to do that. And then obviously sales and marketing was always a struggle for us, as kind of a growth strategy, other than our
Great customer service.
great customer service.
Well, because you say that, but what percentage of the market share do you think you had of all your available customers? Would you end up probably at your market share?
85%. And we lost, I don't know, if we lost 3 customers a year, we would be stressing out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I would say, and I have said before, that the best marketing is delivering the goods.
Amen.
Because I have a lot of companies that come to us that think that sales and marketing is going to solve their problem, but you sell a trash product, you don't actually care, you don't follow through. We talk a ton about advocacy, right? And advocacy, we declare a brand advocate as somebody who speaks positively about you, tells other people about you, leaves those positive reviews, buys again and again, and stays your customer. I mean, it's almost like your business was full of advocates.
Yeah, and what's amazing is our growth that we did without advertising, without us advertising.
Yes.
We would get phone call after phone call. Well, my neighbor and my aunt and my sister told me that if I didn't go with you guys, then I was crazy. I'd pick up the phone and be like, okay, well, let's set up an account.
Yep.
Fantastic, set me up. And then the experience that those customers got when we showed up at their door.
Yep.
People talk about that all the time. The attention to detail, the politeness, the kindness, the respect that they showed. It sold us. By the time we would leave that customer's house, they would tell us, hey, you need to go down here and talk to Jim, or you need to go down here and talk to Susie, and she's gonna. In fact, I'm gonna call her and let her know that you're gonna come down and say hi to her. I mean,
you got an advocate. You're literally leaving the job, going to a new sales appointment.
Yes.
And see, and again, I mean, I own a marketing agency, so I want brands to hire us to buy our software, buy our services to help them. But like, the best marketing that you can do is to know the people you serve, the problems you solve, do it in an exceptional manner, and to create people that are sending you more business. And that is literally what your business grew on. And it's funny because now you look back and you think of things like, well, what was the extra effort that we spent to do this or that? Actually, that was like your advertising cost.
It was.
Those are your advertising expenses. And rather than it being in paid clicks and, and landing pages and whatever else, it was in people recommending you. And you did that in a fantastic way.
We would have these discussions with, say, for instance, our delivery drivers. I would tell my delivery drivers, if the customer comes out to say hi to you, go say hi to them.
Yes.
Have a conversation with them. I could have been like, hey, you know what? All we care about is gallons delivered per hour.
Right.
Drive, deliver. If someone comes out, tell them, I can't do that. Now, there were times in the seasons where it was absolutely necessary, but it's easy to explain those times. But when the opportunity arose and there was time for it, take the extra time. And the relationship that my drivers had and my service technicians had with the customers that they had was invaluable. Yep. I mean, I get phone calls all the time. Hey, Jason, Matt, what a wonderful guy. It's amazing, fantastic, great representation of your company.
Yeah.
And that would just get us more and more customers.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's awesome. Yeah, that's what I always loved about what you did. So let's transition a little bit because, you mentioned the grind, the hours, the stuff. You mentioned having your firstborn when you started the business. And we talk a lot about this. Like, we want to have wildly successful businesses, but I don't believe sacrificing family is worth anything that we can do from a business perspective. Now, you had a business that was so time consuming, ate you up in so many different ways. How did you manage this, leader of a business, leader of a home, family dynamic? What types of things did you learn or find yourself going into to be family man in the context of such a demanding role?
Well, there were times where it wasn't healthy. There were definitely times where it wasn't healthy. Early on in the business, and this is kind of interesting because early on in the business, I actually took my son with me because I was doing everything. I could throw him in the truck with me. We'd go make deliveries. We'd go do service calls. I mean, I remember strapping car seats into my service vehicles and taking my oldest son. But by the time my youngest son came around, I was a lot more in the office, and the ability to do that wasn't there. We were able to get to a point where we had our weekends, and that was a big hiring employees.
Right.
Once we got to the point where we could hire employees, and that's another thing, is just we held on too long to just doing things ourselves. My brother and I, something we would always have, we kind of butt heads on occasionally is, my brother was big. Yeah, if you're going to do it right, you got to do it yourself. And I wasn't necessarily to that. I believe that you could train people, hire on core values. Once they have the core values, you train them to do it right, and build your team. And once we got to that point, we built teams that allowed us to be home for the weekends, and that was a huge deal. But there was a lot of sacrifice, and I think any entrepreneur that's in business knows that there's a lot of sacrifice. It's not an easy thing. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it. Yeah. Prayer, a lot of prayer, and being intentional with the time that you do have is important, and taking the time to intentionally be with your family when you had that time was what really kind of saved a lot of that relationship. And I have a wonderful relationship with my family today. Yeah. And my boys.
Well, that's one thing I definitely noticed, being involved in your life was the moments that you did have, you took advantage of. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like dad's got to sit on the couch and watch TV to like, recoup kind of stuff, which unfortunately a lot do. You were grabbing your boys, you were snowboarding, you were hitting the lake, you were camping, you were fishing, you were exploring. You were always very intentional about getting out in life, hand on hand, and getting your boys doing stuff. And I always really, I looked up to that. You had your kids ahead of me, so I got to watch kind of how you did that. And I was always really impressed with that, about creating experiences with your kids. And you definitely did that with your boys quite a bit. Yep.
And they got to be involved, and they got to see business, and I don't know if my boys will ever get into business. I think later on as they mature, I think there's going to be kind of I don't see them being able to just be an employee, but we'll see.
Yeah. More's caught than taught, right?
Yeah, right.
So it's hard to be in that, to not then get the wheels turning.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you've created about 100 other businesses in your mind.
Yes, I have.
We've talked at length many different times.
Yeah, you've helped me rein some of those in. Jason, how do you want your life to be? How do you see your life?
I do say that because I do believe lifestyle. And actually, I learned that a lot from watching you. Obviously, like you being 25 years old, jumping into this thing, and then all of a sudden it's like, it just takes off. And you're like, whoa, what to do? I remember watching you, and just to be honest, there's times where you were stuck by the geography, the demands, the everything, and I could see it in your eyes. You didn't have quite that. And I started my business years and years after you did, and I remember one of the things that I said about my business, and I mean in a very positive way, seeing what you went through, I said my business must be subject to my lifestyle, not my lifestyle subject to my business. And so when I make decisions, I think about things, I want to make sure that my business is a supporter to the type of life that I want to have, not being like, oh, I can limit what I do in certain scenarios because of the business I built. And that's a big difference.
It's a huge difference. I would say if you're planning on starting a business, that's absolutely critical. But if you're in a business, you don't have a lot of, it's going to take a lot of effort to get your business to that point, because you weren't there to begin with.
Right.
And so those are tough questions, tough soul searching questions that you have to really work on. And what does that mean? Does it mean, you make less money, or you don't grow to that next level? And those were definitely questions that ended up later on coming into our lives, is at what point do we want to keep pushing ourselves to the point of breaking ourselves and breaking our family and taking away from the things that we love. And, watching our children grow up and knowing that this is, there's a limited, finite amount of time that you have with your family. And those were very important things, and played a role definitely in the sale of Mountain Flame Propane. So.
Yeah. Well, you built an amazing organization. Mm-hmm. You also had a lot of foresight, because even in the midst of leveraging the relationship you had and the thing, you were able to also start some other organizations off the side, so that you're still in entrepreneurship, you still get to do things, but even those businesses are a little bit more conducive to kind of the things we're talking about.
It was a big deal. Yeah, when we purchased a second propane company, and the reason we purchased it is because it fit better into what our lifestyle wanted to be.
Yeah.
And has allowed us to live a better lifestyle. So we sold a company that ate up 60 hours a week of my time, and bought a company that takes up about 8 hours a week of our time. So
to get this man to fly across the country to Tampa and spend a week with me was a lot harder a few years ago, because trust me, I'm always trying to pull him to hang out. So it was a little easier to get you out here this time.
Oh, yeah. And would have been virtually impossible. Virtually impossible.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
All right. So let me ask you this. Just kind of high level, right? You get to sit down. You're sitting down with a cup of coffee with a 25-year-old who wants to start a business. Mm-hmm. You're drinking a cup of coffee. What would be, the handful of things that you would want to share with that 25-year-old before he started his business?
Well, the first thing I'd ask him is are you planning on doing this by yourself, or are you going to be involved with family, partners? Because if you're doing it by yourself, then it's a completely different conversation. But if you're going to get in business with partners or with family, which is what I was in, there was some groundwork that we didn't do early on that caused a lot of problems down the road. Discussing what your roles are going to be in the business, setting up those expectations early would have been helpful, because there was a lot of assumptions that kind of happened. Hey, what are you good at? None of those things ever came up. Hey, what are you good at? What do you love to do? What do you hate to do? And then building the business around amplifying each person's role that they're good at, and appreciating those, and understanding that, hey, I'm going to ask you to do things down the road that I know you're not good at, but I'm also going to be there to support you in that. And I think that would be a big role. I would say, I'd tell a 25-year-old, wow, if I tell a 25-year-old me to take a little more time in thinking about the future and what that looks like, and planning. Get good mentors, get good consultants, legal consultants, financial consultants. I would say, and marketing consultants. I think those are things that too often we think we need to carry all these burdens on ourselves. It's worth the money. I know it's hard to say when you're broke and you're just driving. It's worth it in the long run to pay a little extra for that wisdom of people that's what they love to do. And I would say that would be probably the biggest thing I would tell me at 25 years old, is to seek out people that are professionals in those areas, and that's what they love to do. I would also tell myself to have a little more fun in it, to find a little more joy in the work.
Yeah.
Find some time to get away and get away from the grind. If I would have just taken a quarterly and just gotten away for a weekend and just done some higher level thinking and planning, I think it would have helped me tremendously, instead of just worrying about the day-to-day stuff.
It's awesome.
Now, read some good books.
Yeah. One thing we do, we share books.
Good.
We do share some books.
He's given me almost every book that I've read, and it changed my life. He would send me a book and say, read this book, and I'd call him back. Changing everything, throwing it all out. Let's go. Which
may have caused some troubles in the organization from time to time.
It did. If you're going to read a book and you have partnerships or family, everybody needs to read the book.
Yeah, everybody needs to read the book. That's awesome. Cool, man.
Yeah.
Well, this was fantastic, Jay. We could do this for another 2 hours. I mean, there were so many different things you pivoted on. I'm going to go here, I'm going to go there, and maybe I'll have you on again. But
employees, I'm telling you, team driving stuff. I'd love to do another one on team stuff.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's do another one. You'll do another one with me, Jay?
Absolutely. Let's go.
Awesome.
Let's do it.
Well, cool, man. Well, this was great. I appreciate you. You have been a major inspiration in my life. I love you to death. You're a great man, and I can't wait to see the next thing you build. And we'll have you on for that one as well. So thanks for taking some time to chat with us.
I love being here. Thank you for having me.
Amen. All right. Well, thanks, guys. This was week, 10 or 11, one of those. But we're banging out 75 consecutive lives, so we'll see you on Monday for the next one. You guys have an amazing weekend. Thanks so much for watching. God bless you guys.
Amen.